are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hey, welcome back to the Horror Sanctum. Jay here with John, Kellen, and TJ, and welcome to our first ever Horror Sanctum short. Every now and again, we're going to get to watch a short film, something that's 30 minutes or less, and then we're going to chat about it for 10 minutes or less. I think this will be fun, and there's some short films out there that deserve some attention. Our first film was Ari Aster's thesis film while he was studying at the American Film Institute's graduate school in California. You know Ari, he's the director of Midsommar and Hereditary. If you haven't seen the film, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, watch it with us, but be warned, there are many trigger warnings in this film, a lot. So Strange Things About the Johnsons, 2011. The Johnsons are an attractive, well-to-do, upper-middle-class family. Sidney, the husband and father, is a famous poet, known and adored for his kindness and sensitivity. Joan, wife and mother, is a dutiful housewife and obsessive homemaker and the life of every party. Their son, Isaiah, is a charismatic young man who has just gotten married to an equally appealing young woman. In fact, there's only one thing that separates the Johnsons from their charming friends and neighbors. Isaiah, the son, has been molesting his father. Yeah. So the first sound we hear in this movie, and then we'll go around, the first thing you hear in this, you're like, what is that? Is it water? Like, you just hear something faint, and then you realize it's this young son in bed masturbating. He's looking at a picture. We're like, oh, wonder, is it a girl? What is it? It's a picture of his dad. And just like that, we're off. I'm going to switch it over to TJ.
Of course you would. I had heard about this film, but I had never looked into. I knew it was an Ari Aster short, and I knew from my history with Ari Aster that probably everything he does is going to make me feel terribly uncomfortable, and I need to learn to not watch them with precarious members of my family and friends. The short version is I was somehow convinced to watch in the theater Hereditary, I believe, with my pastor at the time. And then I watched Midsommar with my teenage daughter for the first time. So thankfully, I didn't watch this one with anybody. That would have went terribly. But
you don't want to watch. That's right.
No. Initially, after the shock and the awe of, oh my God, they're actually going there, it's obviously playing with taboo, but I think that's something that Ari does and does really well, which just to play with taboo for the hell of it, just the shock and awe, I've never really been interested in. But if you can do something interesting with it and actually make some points, I mean, this is a domestic abuse, trauma, drama film, and it talks about there's a lot of things, and we don't really, we could probably do an hour on this, so I'm just going to jump into the meat of it. What I see in this, that it took me a second to think about after it was done, that I started being like, oh, there's maybe potential for deeper layers there, was you don't know that if it does not seem to me like that first scene was when the weirdness started happening with dad and son, because that was a really weird, awkward interaction with the dad, even in that first scene. Like, I would not be surprised if dad hadn't have been abusing son, and because what we know from psychology is that hurting people hurt people, and the cycle of trauma and abuse perpetuates. If someone grew up being abused, the likelihood of them becoming an abuser themselves is like 1,000% practically to the average person. And just that angle on things, but then the angle of, oh, they're making the older guy the subservient, and the one who's the fatherly, they're flipping that family dynamic. And what it really is about is it's about unhealthy enmeshment, and where that can lead to when you make your person a parent instead of like a healthy relationship. And when you really think about the psychology of that, that's something that people do all the time to a lesser extent. They're using the far out extent to kind of make it a more powerful statement. But there's people that do this all the time with their close family of origin relationships, and it really jacks up their relationships a lot of times with spouses and other family and siblings. And so what he did with that, I think there's a lot to unpack.
For sure. Kellen?
I kind of looked at it as why the hell are you making me watch this?
That was my initial reaction.
Because a lot of I follow Sad Spaceman video on Instagram, and I actually a lot of times will see something, oh, that looks good, and I'll just go ahead and start watching it right then. And so when he introduced this to us, I was like, oh, that looks fun. It was not. It was not. The poster's misleading. The title is misleading until you realize that this is a dark film. But all of that aside, it's almost like one of those, like you said, talking about the psychology. It's like, how far would you go as a parent to make your child happy? Like, where do you draw the line? At what point do you say, this is unhealthy? And obviously, this dad wanting that opening scene to me was kind of like setting the tempo for how understanding and patient the father was. He walks in on his son in a compromised situation, not realizing that the son obviously has something wrong, as far as his infatuation with his dad, showing the picture. But it's, showing that the dad is willing to extend himself to make his son feel comfortable and accepted for who he is, not realizing that who he is a monster. And like you said, it flips that dynamic. It's usually the parent that's abusing the child, but here we have the child who is taking over that abusive role. And to me, it's more of, how did that get started? How did the son get to the point where he was basically being sexual with his father, and the father just allowing it because, they have that scene, the wedding day, behind the fence, and it shows, the father's basically about to emotionally break down, letting his son do something to him. But you get that feeling like it's like the dad doesn't want to tell his son no because he just wants his son to be happy, and eventually it breaks him. We get to that point in the movie where the father can't take it anymore. But it is an interesting dynamics, which flipping that whole abusive relationship thing on its head and going in a completely different direction, which is what this movie does. Within the first 5 minutes, it's it tells you we're going in a completely different direction than you thought when you first started this. So it's definitely a shock. This is a movie that's meant to shock you into thinking. You can take it as face value as like, this is just a messed up movie, or like you said, you can start looking in the psychology of it and realize, okay, there's a lot of layers you can unpack here. The mom sitting there allowing it to happen, and then confessing that she knew it had been going on for at least since his senior prom. So she's complicit in it. The dad's complicit in it. So who's really the monster? Who's really at fault? It's just a lot of layers.
Yeah. John?
I loved it. It probably top 5 best short films I've ever seen, honestly. And it is a hard watch. It's disturbing, but I was not a huge fan of I liked Hereditary, wasn't a huge fan. I have not seen Midsommar. I know I need to see Midsommar.
What are we even doing
I've
here?
seen that.
But-
I've even seen that.
But I do think, watching this, first time watching this, if I was not familiar with Ari Aster, I would think give this guy any movie he wants because he knows what he's doing. I think there's obviously a lot to unpack with the angle with the father and son and what's going on. Where did it start? Where did it originate? Who's actually the one that wanted it first? I mean, even in the scene where they're taking the family photos where the son is looking up and you notice even the father's looking down, they're kind of keep looking at each other. And the one thing that I really noticed too that was kind of the whole representation of being a monster, like the Cocoon Man, the autobiography he was writing, and just how the son, he sort of portrayed like he's becoming a monster in the movie when he kicks the door down and he basically rapes the dad. And there's obviously more to it than that, but he's really manifesting that idea that the son is a killer, or well, the son is a monster, right? He's becoming this monster just like the father probably was when he was a kid. So yeah, I thought it was tremendous, loved it. Definitely got also some Jordan Peele vibes too, just with some of the oddness with the way they were acting in the movie. Some of the strange dialogue gave me that vibe, but definitely loved it.
Yeah, we'll change the shorts to under 15 minutes because we like to talk, don't we?
10 minutes is tough.
Sigmund Freud would have loved this movie. He would have loved it, because it flips the scripts on the Oedipus complex, the complex, which is the female version. And I'm sure there's a scientific name for it, but I didn't want to Google it too hard and get put on some weird list somewhere, so I didn't do.
Smart.
But we'll give our ratings and then we'll wrap it up. But I don't know if you guys agree with me on this or not, but the most disturbing part of this entire movie, and I loved it, but the most disturbing part is the bathtub scene.
Yeah.
Not because the actions that take place, but because the son didn't take off any of his clothes. He just let his pants hang down his ankles and got in this full bathtub.
Right.
What? Come on. That made that gave me the heebie-jeebies. But
that lets you know his level of sanity there.
I remember it was an interview or a Q&A that Ari Aster had, and the first question he got was a kid or a student said, "Are you okay?" And seeing stuff like this and Midsommar and Hereditary, you wonder, is Ari Aster okay? He's okay in my book. Keep making movies. Looking forward to the Joaquin Phoenix one. As far as ratings go, short films are hard to rate, but after thinking about it, I'm going 4 out of 5. It's hard to watch. It's disturbing, but it's very captivating. And it's very deep. It is very layered. So I gave it a 4. TJ?
Yeah, I'm with you. Initially, I was like, this is straight up garbage, and why am I watching this? But the more that I thought about the psychological aspects, to be clear, I think the father was raping the boy before that initial scene. And I think he was basically teaching him how to be. And then it was just the cycle. And then he becomes the monster that the dad was. And then he gets the taste of his own medicine. So then that makes you have conflicting thoughts about, well, how much do you sympathize with him? But he would have only done that if he was also the victim of abuse. So because the movie makes you have to think about stuff like this, the more you look at it, I got to give it the 4 out of 5. I don't know that I'll ever watch it again. If I do, maybe only once, just to unpack layers again. But yeah, you don't have to love watching everything and multiple rewatches to think it's good. It's like, I'm not going to watch Schindler's List like on replay, but it's a great film.
Or The Road. Yeah, and emotion and what you feel is something completely different than, I'm going to watch Tremors probably 20 more times in my lifetime.
Yeah.
This one I might watch once or twice, but I wanted to share it with you guys because I had seen it and I did appreciate it. Kellen, what'd you give it?
I give it a 3.5. It's definitely a good watch. I think it's the right amount of time. I don't think that could be a feature-length film. I think the amount of time that movie took was the sweet spot. You don't need a whole lot of extra stuff. It gets right into the meat of what it's about, and it punches you in the face. It's shocking. It's gripping. It's So for what it is, yeah, 3.5. I thought it was good.
John.
Honestly, I hate doing that. 5 out of 5. I
Wow.
thought it was
Wow.
as a short. I thought it was just absolutely in the end. Like I'm not gonna
John,
watch it
are
a
you
lot.
okay?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna like. I agree. It's like Schindler's List. I'm not gonna watch it a lot, but I really can't pick a flaw out in it. So I would give it a 5. Yeah.
So really your takeaway here that we want you from the Horror Sanctum is that John likes movies about boys raping their dads.
Definitely not.
First time he's given
Definitely
himself
not.
Scratch that from the record, please. All
I'm
right.
gonna go ahead and retract that one.
Our first failed attempt at being 10 minutes or less is a success. We will do this again. I don't know when, but all you guys think of another short film, we'll get together and watch it. So thanks for tuning in. Follow us on the gram, subscribe on YouTube, wherever you're listening to podcasts now. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ. And until next time,
Keep it spooky.
Later.